Welcome, everyone. This is Pineleaf Needles, and you are listening to a special edition of LOTRO Players News, where we are going to look at a major news event for today. But first, let me introduce our team, and we have with us Andang,
Hey, everybody.
Terry Adwin,
Hi, hi.
and Carvette.
At your servers for now.
And that is our hint of what is upcoming, and that is that they have announced some of the details and gives a full diary about what's coming up for server closures and transfers. Anding, what's up?
Yes, well, Pineleaf, this news came as kind of a surprise, first of all. We were told we were going to be given a ton of warning, and then all of a sudden we're just hit with a dev diary saying that 19 servers are going to be closed. There's still going to be tons and tons of time for people to transfer off of those closed servers, which we'll get to in a bit, but the news itself came as kind of a shock and came pretty quick. Um, and so the news is, first of all, that 19 servers are going to be closed around the end of the year, and so people will be able to begin transferring on August 3rd. And there's a whole bunch of information and qualifiers and things that are not necessarily, 100% one way. And so there's a lot of information in this dev diary that was released and then later posts on the forums. So to get things started out, in a recent dev diary, Frelorn announced that 19 servers are going to be closed, and that will happen on August 3rd. At that point, players will no longer be allowed to create new characters on those servers, which makes sense. I don't think anyone would want to create a character on a server just to find out that it's going to be closing. That would not be the best, probably. This will also mark the start of free transfers for all characters on all worlds, but the change will be gradual, so some characters on some servers will not be available until a couple months, the transfers of those characters. For a couple weeks, actually. And so that's kind of interesting. And there's been various different posts by different devs that are saying different things about this, so we don't know exactly which servers are going to be open for transfers starting August 3rd. But it sounds like that the core 10 servers that are staying are the ones that will be open for transfers on August 3rd. After that, servers will gradually be added, and so the closing servers will gradually be added in, and those will be free transfers for characters to transfer to the 10 remaining servers. There will be 5 US servers and 5 European servers. So that means a lot of servers are going. What are your guys' reactions to that so far?
Well, I must say that's a few more servers than I thought would be closing, but then I really didn't have a good idea how many would be going.
Yeah, I was surprised by how many as well. Terry?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were expecting more to stay open than the 10 that's actually been announced as of today. So I don't know. I'm still trying to process it.
Yeah, I was expecting at the very least there to be more US servers because I'm guessing there's more US players. I might be wrong in that, but I was expecting more of the servers that I'm used to be open still in a little bit, but we'll find out
Well,
more
they
about that
needed
next week.
they needed more for the European side simply because they needed 2 additional languages to support over there.
Yeah, that's true as well. There are going to be a English server, a German server, and a French server, and also a roleplay server, and then a random other server.
Yeah, it
Right.
seems
Well,
like
I can
that'll
guess
echo
which
across
is
the
the
time.
roleplay server.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't
And
know. It could be because it seems like I'm hearing different things about different RP servers. I mean, we would guess it would be Laurelland for the US and or for the EU, and then Landrewall for the US, but we'll see how it goes.
yeah, nothing is set in stone, and I doubt they would do this, but they might, set a new roleplay server. I really doubt that, but
Well,
um,
I get the impression they said that the rules are going to stay the same, which means that on the U.S. side, they they meant the RP encouraged server,
Yeah.
meaning
So
Landroval.
I guess.
hopefully Landroval and Laurelin will stay around since that's all of our servers. I know that's kind of selfish, but that's our
Yeah,
hope.
but well, I mean, Landroval is pretty much safe simply because during some of the other items in later threads and stuff like that made it sound like that Brandywine and Landroval are your two safest bets at the moment.
Right. Which leaves the rest of the servers, aside from Laurelin, not too safe right now. So,
Yeah.
Well, I
kind of
mean,
interesting.
I don't know if safe is the right terminology. It
Yeah,
just means things are going to change.
right.
From every different post I've seen, they're doing everything possible to maintain all of the stuff you've worked so hard for. It's just not going to be in the same place.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and it looks like the transferring may be kind of phased out. I'm not sure if it's going to initially pop and everybody will get to transfer at once on the third. I think on the third they're definitely going to post the list of which servers are going to be closed, and I think there was even a thread that mentioned they might be posted in order, so you
Right.
can tell when they're going to get closed relative to the other servers.
Well,
It
when
doesn't
Well,
transfers are
necessarily.
going to open, not when they're going to be
Yeah,
closed.
right. I mean, basically, we'll open these servers for transfers, and then a week later they'll open the next set of servers, depending on how the hardware or the software is rolled out. So I think that we may not have a land rush come August 3rd. We'll just know these are the ones that are on the list.
Well, and certain servers might have mass migrations on those days, but
Yeah,
oh yeah.
there won't
yeah,
be
sure.
a general mass chaos migration going
Yeah,
on
yeah, and
all
it
at
makes
once
sense
because
to stagger it. It really does.
exactly, especially if something's broken, the last thing you want is every server to have different characters that are broken instead of having it contained to like one single
Right.
server and be able to solve the problem then. So I think that that's definitely a smart way to do it. All right, and continuing on, starting in October, the transfers between the remaining 10, 5 EU and 5 US, will no longer be free, but closed worlds. So all servers that are being closed will have free transfers as long as LOTRO continues. So that's good news. Something we already knew, but still good that they're
Yeah.
reaffirming that, and it hasn't changed. Um, the servers that are going to be closed will be open until sometime in January of 2016. So that's plenty of time, I think, for people to transfer off of the current servers, and you can technically even still play on the old servers with less and less players as the year goes on. So, maybe if you really don't like other players, you could have a low
Until
low
the end of
count
the
of
year, in
people
which
for a
case you're
little
just
bit.
gonna,
Mine.
yeah.
It's all mine.
And even after the servers close, you will still be able to transfer your character, they've said. Although, me personally, I don't know if I'd want to wait that long just in case something went wrong and you can't.
Hmm.
But they did say that you can, so you might want to wait a little bit longer for less lag if that's what you're into. All right, it continues on. Their dev diary continued on saying that there is a new transfer tool that will work through the launcher that will allow players to transfer the following characters, which is kind of given, account shared currency, which is Mithril coins, skirmish, and that sort of thing, shared storage, housing storage, kind of houses, but that's kind of confusing and they're not really sure how exactly that, like they're sure how it works, but they're not explaining it very well.
Well, I got the impression that's essentially a more of a refund and send the items inside the house thing because that's all they can do.
Yeah, that's basically what I got out of it
Right,
too.
but they were also concerned about neighborhoods filling up and things like that, so it sounded like there was one post that kind of hinted to where it made it kind of not 100% sure, but we'll see what happens with that, but that's probably the most likely one. There's also wardrobe that you can transfer, destiny points, which, okay. And you can also
Hey, that makes a
transfer.
difference to me.
It is good for VIP players that still have destiny points. And you can also do kinship transfers that actually have to be started by the kin leader. So the player that is the kin leader needs to transfer that character that is the kin leader to the new server, and then that new kin will be set up. if your kin name is the same as another kin name, there will be a -1 put on your kin. The kins that have been on the server have priority. It doesn't work the same way for characters, we'll get to that in a bit. But the kins that are on the same server and have been there already have the priority for the names, and then the other ones that are being transferred over get a -1, and they did say that you can talk to the devs, and they will actually take care of that and get away, allow you to change your name or whatever you need to do to get that -1 taken away.
Well, it probably means changing the name because
Right. Or maybe you want to add an extra word on the end, who knows? Um, we're now the Mighty Mighty Ducks. All right. Any
Mighty
other
Ducks
thoughts on any
2.
of that stuff? All right, Silence says no.
Well, I mean, it makes sense.
It does all make sense,
Yeah,
and I'm
it makes
glad that they were
sense.
able to get all that to hopefully work, because that was a big fear with closing servers to lose all that stuff, but luckily it seems that that won't have to be the case. One thing that they did say will not be transferable is mail, which makes sense since it's between characters, and if you transfer a character away from a server, what does that mean to the mail? And I'm sure it would be a coding nightmare, so that makes perfect sense that you can't transfer mail between servers.
Yeah.
Um,
Check your mail.
yeah,
Check your
definitely.
mail. Remove any attachments.
Yep.
Yeah, take all of those mail slots that you've used as your portable, on-demand, revolving inventory and put them in somebody's vault or sell them off. Do something with it.
It actually is permanent revolving inventory for me. There's items that I don't know where they are. I just know they're in somebody's mail.
You
So you'll
check there
have a
every
lot of
month or
fun
so.
once this starts.
Yeah, every 4 weeks or so, I go through all my characters and see who's got what and send it to somebody else. Next person in the chain.
All right. And the dev diary does continue on saying that name priority for characters will be where the character that was on the server first will get to keep their name unless that character has been inactive for a year. In which case, either the character that has been inactive for a year or the character moving over that has the same name will get a -1 after their name. And this character, the affected character that has the -1 to their name, will get a free token to change their name, which I think is probably the best way to do it. Because a year is a long time, and so if there's somebody that made Andang like 7 years ago on Dwaradelf, it's really, although that server wasn't around 7 years ago, but you get my idea. It really wouldn't be nice if I had to transfer over there and have to, change my name just because somebody that hasn't played for 7 years had it.
Oh, so that means then that if I want to transfer to a server that has a level 1 champion called Pineleaf there. Hey, there is one. I know because there was one I couldn't create a Pineleaf because of it.
Mm-hmm. Then assuming that that server is still open, Pineleaf, you
Well,
can
yeah, I'm
transfer
talking
your
about if one of
character.
the open server. I have a feeling though that server is closing anyway, so it'll be a moot point.
But what is interesting, and I pointed this out to Pineleaf before the show, is that Pineleaf has a Pineleaf on most servers. And so he's going to have like 2, maybe 3 Pineleafs all moving to one server, and so he's going to have to really think about renaming his characters because of that. So it'll be an interesting challenge for Pineleaf with the character rename. But luckily you'll be
Like
getting tokens for that.
pine leaf, pine leafy, pine leaf, pine twig,
Pineleaf.
pine straw.
Pine Spear.
Well, it brings up an interesting point. If people do have the same character multiple times across servers, because I have Terry Edwin on every server, what happens if I try to move multiple Terry Edwins to the same server? So is it like Terry Edwin -1, Terry Edwin -2, or Terry
Probably.
Edwin
Each
-1
one
1
will be issued
or
a
dash
serial
1 dash
number at
1?
the door, and they will be identified by the security code that will be tattooed into their upper inner arm.
Well, the level
Terry
1
Edwin
ones I'm not going to bother
27, you are to
transferring.
report.
It's probably not going to happen,
Yeah.
but you never know.
But
Oh
Pineleaf,
yeah,
you could name your
I would think
character
so.
you could name your character Pine Leaves on the one that leaves the server, so that then you could just be like,
Oh,
he's the one that left.
Pine falling leaf.
Terrible puns. All right, so let's continue on. The article also reminds players that you will not be able to change between EU and US servers because Codemasters didn't maintain the game the way that Turbine wanted them to, and so it caused uh, numbers of characters because each character is actually given a number, like Carv was saying, on the back end of things. And apparently, there are some characters on the EU server that have the same number as some characters on the US server, and so that could result in the deletion of a character, which would be really bad. So,
Yeah.
luckily, they made sure that that is not possible, sadly.
Well, I
Right. That's
mean,
one of the reasons why sometimes a an attempt to transfer on Bulwark can fail. That's one of the things that can cause it. Other things, of course, could
mm,
also, in that if the one with the ID gets there first and someone from the other side attempts with the same ID, and that second one's not coming over.
yeah. It's the idea that in a database, which is my job, in the real world, there's unique IDs that are supposed to carry across the entire system that designates this is the main item, or in this case, character that it ties to all of these other things that tie back to that one central identification point. And since we're dealing with two systems that share essentially a set of identification points, the amount of coding to get something from identification point A to transfer to system B with the same identification point and changing it at the same time carries a lot of risk, and it's a database administrator's nightmare.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And risk and MMO maintenance are things you.
Yeah, you don't want to do that because you delete somebody who's got 5 years invested in your game, and it's just bad, 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 bad.
Right.
All right, and the diary does continue on by recommending the following transfer order for players that are going to be transferring with kinships and other items as well. They say kinship leaders need to transfer first, which makes sense. Then homeowners, then shared items, and then other characters, or all at once if they are going to the same world. So, in other words, if you're transferring them to different worlds, you want to transfer your kin first, then home, then items, then other stuff. But there is going to be an option to just transfer all the stuff on a server to another server, they said, or all the stuff on your account to another server. So, that's good to keep in mind. The diary also gives an outlook that is quite positive to the future on things that this transfer will allow, so at least there seems to be a plus side. And this is a quote from, I believe, Frelorn wrote the dev diary, so this is a quote from him. It says, "So what happens after we all moved over to the remaining 10? Lots of fun times ahead. The new data center we will be moving provides a much faster connection to the internet with more direct ports to all territories. We are updating all of our software to the latest and greatest versions, and all of the worlds are moving to new top-of-the-line hardware, allowing for less interruptions of service and smoother gameplay experience for all of us. Having fewer worlds means the ability for our team to run more live events on those worlds, and consolidation of players will mean the worlds will be more active, giving you more people to form fellowships, kinships, or even just enjoy a fellowship festival with. We are all really excited about this chance to reinvigorate Middle Earth, and we hope you are as well." So there's a lot of PR speak in that, but there is also some interesting points.
Mm.
It says, the servers will be working better, and so assuming that, combining everyone onto the smaller servers doesn't overcompensate for the fact that they're moving to new servers, we should have less lag and faster connections and things like that, which is just good news all around. It also mentions, and this is something that I don't think they've mentioned anywhere yet, that they're actually planning to do more events and like interactions with players on these kind of servers and like server specific things and stuff like that. So I thought that was really interesting, that they mentioned that because that harkens back to like old LOTRO back in launch
Huh.
days.
Yeah, probably because when you have 29 servers, it's like, well, if you go and do a special event at this server, but you don't do it at another one, they'll be talking about favoritism and all that stuff and all this bad blood as a result. But of course, you don't have the staff to do 29.
Right. As a side note, Aerithert might have wanted to wait to do lunch runs, because you would have significantly less work to do now.
He was actually thankful that he got them all done in time because it
Yeah,
does give each server that kind of unique identity while
definitely.
they had the chance. And now it's going to be like, hey, we're on the new Brandywine with, Aerithert of Gladden or, Pine Leaf of Imladris or, XYZ character of other server. And so it's going to be a whole different community because you're going to get what essentially is a whole bunch of different server populations with their own flavor of Lord of the Rings Online, now all smashed together into these bigger mega communities, and it's going to be like very different. So I think that what we're going to see is all the servers that come out of this are going to have an amalgamation, if you will, of server cultures. So we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be fun.
It'll be really interesting. I am glad that it seems like that they're keeping the roleplay servers. Because, like we said earlier on a previous episode of LOTRO Players News, it would be really terrible if Brandywine and Landerville met together because those players are totally different from each other.
That's
So,
true.
that is good news at least. And speaking of Brandywine, the diary also has a frequently asked questions section at the end, and there's some interesting insight into what's going on with Brandywine and how it sounds like it's going to be one of the 10 remaining servers, which I don't think anyone's really surprised about, but it is interesting that they're already speaking on this when they're saying they're not going to announce the servers till a week from today. So it does say, question, what about lag on Brandywine? Answer, Brandywine will be made unavailable as a transfer destination until that server is moved to newer hardware and performance improvements are confirmed. So there's a few things to unpack here that aren't the most obvious at the start. First of all, you can't transfer to Brandywine unless they said later in a forum post you pay to, which I think is probably a good thing since they said that it's one of the most popular servers, and they've done in the past where you can't even transfer to some of the most popular servers, you can only create new characters there. So
One of the most popular servers is a little bit of an understatement based on other messages.
well,
Yeah,
yes, they said it
basically sounds
was
like
way ahead
Brandywine.
of the other servers as far as
Yeah.
population. So, yeah, that's true. Um, that being said, I don't think on the other servers you'll have much of a trouble finding players. At least I hope not. Unless, like, everyone and their dog transfers to Landerville instead of the other three, on the US side at least. I don't think that that'll be much of an issue.
I don't think so. I think that because some people have kind of a hesitancy let me try that again. A hesitancy towards going to something that's tagged as role play, even if it's role play encouraged, like Landerwald is, versus role play enforced. Some folks are just going to steer away from that entirely. So having three servers aside from the big city of Brandywine that are basically just come as you are and play. If you want to role play, fine, but we don't necessarily advertise that. Will probably attract a pretty good chunk of the player base.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, I have a feeling the visitor from another server kinship is still going to be pretty large after all this.
Mm.
Indeed. But we'll find out what server they're visiting to from another server, because it might not be Arkenstone, depending on what happens. But it'll be interesting to
Well, I
see what
was talking
happens.
about visitor from another server. That's a Langeville
There is one
kinship.
on Landerville as well, yeah.
Well, at
That's
least
probably
that's
the
what I've
more
always
popular one.
assumed that when I think
Yeah,
about it.
Right.
that makes sense.
All right. The other thing that is mentioned here is that they say until that server is moved to newer hardware and performance improvements are confirmed. So that means they are combining all the servers before moving to the new hardware. Which at first sounds kind of strange. Why would they be moving all of them to, combining all these characters on these old servers that may or may not be able to handle that number of player players when they could be doing it on the new servers. Well, I thought about that, and it makes sense because on the new hardware, there's only going to be 10 servers. And so that means that instead of transferring all 29 servers to the new hardware, they only have to transfer 10, which I think is a much smarter way to do it on the back end side of things. What do you guys think?
Well, I originally thought, yeah, I also had confused on the whole thing because I didn't think there was any way in the world that they will be able to create 29 new servers and then close 19 of them. That means that would just be ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. They're closing down the ability to create new character, and I'm going to use some database terminology, new character records on the third, on all of the servers that are going to be closed down. So that means the primary identification key for each one of these characters is going to stop creating new content as of the third. So effectively, you're shutting down the growth of 19 or however many servers that are shutting down. That being said, once they've established the servers that are going to be migrated to, they don't have to worry so much about these old servers acquiring new information that needs to be backed up as much. So they're going to migrate everybody over to these 10 servers that are going to stay. And I think that what we're probably going to see is maybe the hardware is going to be updated in phases, just like the transfers are going to be opened in phases. So I
Yeah.
think that what we'll see is the server that's going to get the transfers opened up to is going to be the server that's just been most recently upgraded to the new platform.
That would be a smart way to do it. They
Because
did
that would make more sense to me.
Well, they did say though that it's going to take 2 to 3 months before the hardware upgrade happens. And they said that the server transfers are going to open within about 3 weeks, which means that there's going to be about a month period of time where all servers are open before they move everything over to the new hardware.
Well,
Which means that I suggest that if you don't like lag, that you wait a little bit.
Right. If you're on
yeah.
one of the servers that are being closed, if you're on Landroll or Brandywine, not too much you can do about it.
And you're
But
probably used to lag anyway.
Oh, I'll just, well, yes, there is that. I'll just probably play. I'll spend more time on Winfola until then.
you have doubts about Winfola, huh, Pinely?
Winfola, I don't think Winfola is going to. I can't see Winfola as being one of the top 5 servers.
Okay, Pineleaf. They didn't say. They said a long time ago that it's not necessarily going to be the top five. They said that like the top one is probably almost certainly going to be one, but the top five they might have a less populated one just to have different levels of population, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Well, we'll have to see. But okay, I'm just thinking which one, and I was thinking of an example. Which of the servers I'm on is the most likely one to close, and of course, which is be the most inconvenient for me to handle them, since Winfola has the most characters.
yeah.
Ah, man, that's gonna be tough. All right. And so the fact does continue on by saying that there is an option to move over your full account, which we talked about earlier. It also mentions, which this is something that is finally being confirmed as far as the amount we can have, that there is going to be a certain number of character slots available. And the question was, what if all my character slots are filled? And the answer was, we have doubled the amount of max character slots you can purchase. Now it says max character slots you can purchase. Does that mean that it's only doubling the number you can purchase, or does that mean they're doubling the max number of character slots?
They're doubling the number you can purchase.
Right. So
Yeah, they're
that
making it so that you can have more, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to give you more.
so right now the cap is 17, right?
That sounds about right.
Somewhere
No,
around
it's more
there.
than
No?
that.
It's more?
All right,
17's an
maybe
old
They
19.
number.
increased it when Bjornings came out.
Oh, right, yeah, so
I
it's
think it's
19.
25 now.
Oh,
Well, I know they just added 13 more slots with 16.2, so I don't know if those are the ones they're talking about. That was one of the things we were chatting about earlier when 16.2 launches in Airthaird's chat on his Twitch channel, is that they did open up several more ability to purchase.
Yeah, that
yeah.
might be what they're talking about.
Yeah, I
Uh,
wonder if that's that or if this is an addition to that. I doubt it's an addition, but that would be nice if it is. All right, and in a follow-up post, Vivian mentions when the transfers to the new hardware will take place, which we kind of already talked about, but I'm going to read her quote here. We are still resolving timelines on moving the worlds to new tech, but it is looking like we should be moved over in the next 2 to 3 months. So that's moved past tense, meaning that everything should be moved in 2 to 3 months. And she continues on saying, I will give a better timeline once I have it. So 2 to 3 months from now, all server transfer, all the new hardware and everything will be all upgraded, assuming everything goes to plan.
Assuming everything goes to plan. That is always the big caveat.
So this all of a sudden is we're on a very strict time, well, maybe not strict timetable, but a more defined timetable. And so I think that overall, since we already knew that these transfers were going to be happening, that this dev diary explains everything really well and is good news considering that we already knew this was going to take place. The downside, though, is that there's going to be 19 servers closing. That is more than I thought. Final thoughts. What do you guys think about this whole dev diary in general? And let's start with Carve.
Well, I'm excited. I think that this is going to be a good thing because one of the things I have heard for several years is it's just so hard to get into LOTRO as an MMO because it's quote dead. It's not super easy to get into groups, and that's one of the things I hear from some of the people that I've recruited to play from various other games, and they're like, "Man, it's just so hard to get a group. It's just not fun." And so, doing a consolidation like this of a player base that's across a lot of small servers that are older into newer, more beefy hardware in, I'm going to say, city center type environments where there's a lot more people per server, then we'll have the ability for anybody who's logging in at any level to, hit whatever chat or shoot, heck, the instance finder might even start working again. Gasp. If not,
Did
for
it
the
ever work?
I don't know. But I'm just saying that, like, if people used it, but even if people don't use it, you can get into world chat and say, hey, I would like to run XYZ instance at level 43. And people will be like, hey, I want to do that. And you might actually get 6 people within a relatively short time that are relatively close to level 43, which I think would be awesome because that's one of the main reasons I even came to Landroval was to try and find people to run content on level with. So the idea of having less servers with more people on them makes that much more the MMO feel as opposed to the lone adventurer bravely questing against the forces of evil. And so I'm excited about that.
All right, and before we go on to other final thoughts, I do want to mention a thing from the chat. Fredalis says, there is one question I haven't seen addressed anywhere, is what happens to excess creep characters? And he makes a good point because you can only have one of each class of a creep class. And I don't think they've really addressed this anywhere. If you do, you can actually pay for a transfer, and it requires developers to be involved, um, where you can say which character you want to replace when you're transferring. Um, or you can transfer over and that character will be replaced. So maybe that's what'll happen is that you can transfer over your defiler and it'll say, warning, you will replace any current characters or something like that. Or you might accidentally move over defiler and then have a lot lower level defiler than you did before, or a lower rank. Or it might just not be open to be transferred. I don't know. That is an interesting question. I'm guessing it's open to be transferred, but hopefully they've already thought that and worked it out, and hopefully there'll be a post on that soon on the forums. So Terry, what are your final thoughts?
Well, my final thoughts are, as when this news first came out, please don't panic. I came home from work today and my Twitter had blown up like the sky was falling. Okay, yes, it's kind of a shock that 19 servers are closing, but we all knew that this news was coming in some shape, or form. And the sky is not falling, people. Lotro's not going anywhere. Um, I do think that it's going to be eventually a good thing. Um, Actually, one of the concerns that I have is more of the social aspect because you have a lot of instances where you have a quest and you're on the quest and you have to pick up an item. And if you're on this quest with a group, you can't all pick up the item because once one person picks up the item, it disappears. So I would really appreciate that if you know, as they're going through some of this, if they could maybe look into fixing that so that multiple people can use the same thing, because this is going to cause tons of problems, like the Spring Festival where you had to go around and collect the patches of flowers. You guys think that those patches of flowers are hard to come by on Landreval now? Wait till next year. I mean, I don't even, it got to where I didn't do the Spring Festival on Landreval this year because there was no way I was going to try and compete for those patches of flowers. So note to the devs, if you guys could maybe possibly look into fixing that, that would be much appreciated. There was a Moria epic quest that requires you to go down and collect these treasure caches in, not Red Horn Loads, it's that area in the
In New Melek, you mean?
yeah, Nud Malek. Yeah, you have to go down and collect treasure caches. If you've got more than one person on that quest, you all have to collect the treasure caches. And it was what, Carve? Something like 6 caches per person, and it disappears every time somebody picks it up. That's 18 of those jokers you got to try and find.
Oh,
It was fun.
what's the respawn rate? And how
It
long does
wasn't
it
too
take?
bad. We just ran around
It
killing
wasn't too
orcs,
bad.
working on our
It was
deed.
maybe about 30 seconds to a minute on the respawns, which is still
Yeah, if that. It
eh,
wasn't bad.
Annoying.
It
it's
was annoying, but we did run
because
around
there
and
were
clear out
3
that
of
whole
us. But
area.
can you imagine trying to do that in a 6-person group? You got to wait for 36 of those things. So
All
yeah,
right.
that's my final thought.
And Pineleaf, what are your
All right,
thoughts?
2 items here. First off, this at least now answered the question about why did they I assumed it was, of course, for Bingo Boffin, but why they spruced up the Bounder statue in the Shire. And of course, it was so that they would have a permanent memory of all the servers and what they did during the Bounder's Bounty event.
Yeah, quick side note, people assumed that those were related, but based on posts on the forums, they talked about those separately, so I don't think that they were actually ever related.
Well,
Um,
it's not related to the. They do have a later post in there where it made it sound like that it is a that you can go to there in order to see them for the memory. So I think that it. Oh, you mean the bound? Oh, you mean the Boffin thing? I guess you
right,
meant.
it was not ever
Yeah,
related to Bingo Boffin,
yeah,
although
because
a lot of
they
people
did
have
a
put
lot
those
of.
together.
Yeah, well, it's because they were doing other updates to
Right.
graphics as a result of it.
Yep.
And the second thing is that DDO, now I think it was before I was playing it regularly. DDO had one time gone through its on merger migration thing, and they have survived. And right now, DDO seems to be in a very healthy state on it, and some of the servers are actually still growing. So,
Yeah. All right, so my final thoughts. I think overall this is possibly the best way that they can be doing this. We've known for a long time that this is going to have to happen. Yes, there are 19 servers that are going to be closed, but LOTRO is still very much going to be around. I mean, they are upgrading servers. If they really were in trouble, they would not be upgrading the servers as well as closing servers at the same time. That is really, really, really expensive for them to be moving to a new database
yeah,
and doing this type of a move and doing it for LOTRO. Because if LOTRO is in trouble, they could just leave it till the end of the year at the current stuff and move on after that. But that's not what they're doing. They're moving it to a new upgraded server.
yeah.
So,
Actually, I did remember one other thing,
mhm,
and that is the trend these days for new MMOs has been away from huge numbers of servers and to smaller numbers. In fact,
mhm,
many, like ESO, for example, is one huge server rather than several small ones. But there's a traditional multiple servers here, so I don't think they could quite do that with Lotro for probably several reasons. So, but consolidating going to a smaller number is probably bringing more in line to modern philosophies with MMOs.
Right, and server tech has gotten a ton better than whenever the last time LOTRO upgraded their servers, which might have been since launch. I'm not sure, but it's been a long time.
It's
Definitely
a
since
bit
free to
minor
play.
update since then.
Definitely since free to play. So, it's been a long time. A few other things, even World of Warcraft has had server closings. So it's not just a LOTRO thing, and they didn't have server upgrades at the same time. So LOTRO seems to be in a really good spot. There was a financial investors report that didn't get made exactly to the public on the specifics, but according to analysts who did get that report, it is actually in a really, really good spot. And so fears of LOTRO closing should not be in your mind, because it should be around for a long time. They're doing a ton of effort to keeping LOTRO around by doing this huge server upgrade and improving the game by trying to decrease lag that way. So I think in general this is good news. It's just going to be really hard for some players, and there is that perception now with LOTRO that, oh, they had server closings. But one thing that I have liked about the way that LOTRO has been marketing it is they are calling it server transfers, not closings, because they are moving to a new database that is having better servers. So keep that in mind, and let's all keep enjoying LOTRO. I think that that's the message of today's broadcast. So thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you in a bit for LOTRO Players News if you're on the podcast version. Otherwise, you can watch that video on our YouTube channel coming later in the week. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching and listening and all that, and we will see you again real soon for more of LOTRO Players News.
Bye.